Hi, my name is Alec Lawrence. When I began this program, I was a high school social studies teacher and a department chair. Being a part of my school's leadership team opened my eyes to the fact that I saw myself eventually working my way out of the classroom and into a stronger leadership role. However, after the birth of my daughter in August 2017, I realized that while I wished to further my career, at that point in time, I felt the need to focus on my growing family. So for the past 2 years, I've been a stay-at-home mom, diligently working to complete my coursework for this program. When I began the Dick and Carey instructional design process, I chose Google Classroom as my topic for a number of reasons. I had experience using Google Classroom with a lot of success. I also witnessed lots of teachers continuing to stand at the front of the classroom and lecture endlessly while their students sat passively. This teacher-centric approach produced students who lined up at the door waiting anxiously for the bell to ring, instead of actively participating in their education. The first step in the instructional design process is to identify your goals. I believe that Google Classroom, if used correctly, can help students become more active participants in the learning process. It allows you the ability to add a variety of media, and it gives our students choice. I made it my mission to help teachers find a new way by creating a professional development aimed at educating them about this program and how to utilize it to help them with their own instruction. I had worked with the technology director for my district in the past and felt that this workshop could possibly benefit many teachers, and I hope that I would be able to implement it in the future. The International Society for Technology and Education, which is a very reputable organization in leading the push for the use of technology in education, has set standards for educators that have become widely adopted. Two specific standards, 2 and 6, deal with leadership and facilitating learning through the use of technology. 2B talks about educators should be advocating for learning opportunities that meet the diverse needs of all students. So teachers who aren't trying to differentiate their instruction, through the use of Google Classroom or not, are not in a position to do this if they're only standing at a podium at the front of the classroom. 6B also talks about managing the use of technology and student learning strategies in digital platforms. Again, this can't be accomplished simply by standing in front of the classroom and lecturing all day. However, despite the importance of these skills, some teachers fail to recognize or incorporate them in their classrooms. I believe this has to do with a lack of training, and this further convinced me that this was a pressing issue that definitely needed to be addressed. From there, I created an instructional goal that reads as follows. Teachers will be able to create a classroom in Google Classroom by practicing posting announcements, assignments, questions, instructional materials, and by inviting students to their online classrooms. Analyzing learners in context. This part of the instructional design process presented some challenges, seeing as how it was no longer working and therefore had a limited availability to an audience or learners. When I originally began the process, I reached out to some of my former colleagues through a series of phone calls and emails. Later, I was able to give a questionnaire to Dr. Gonza's CUIN 3312 classes. Even though I had already developed all of the instructional material and had a strategy based on my previous learner interviews, I felt the need to analyze their attitudes, their needs, their motivations, and their ability, just in case I needed to make any adaptations to my original plan. I learned a lot by analyzing the two groups. The pre-service teachers seem much more motivated and more receptive to the idea of Google Classroom. They felt very strongly about incorporating technology into the classroom, while my former colleagues were somewhat skeptical about introducing new technology in the year. The next step in the process is to identify major steps required to perform the goal. I broke the instruction down into 10 major steps. I then took one of the more complex steps and broke it down into each individual part, including the entry skills required. Moving forward, I worked on creating performance objectives that clearly described what the conditions, behaviors, and criteria were in order to reach mastery of the instructional goal. When I think about the performance objectives, I wanted to make sure that the learners understood exactly what they needed to do in order to achieve their instructional goal. The more clear I was about the conditions, behaviors, and the criteria, the more likely they were to get it right, and this will help their confidence grow. Here is an example of the first two steps and their accompanying performance objectives. In this part of the design process, knowing whether or not the learner has achieved or met the instructional goal means there needs to be some form of assessment that matches or coincides with the performance objectives. For this particular assignment, I felt a checklist was the best way to assess which objectives were met. I also felt that by giving this checklist to the learners as they worked would also help them to check themselves. This is actually a very common practice anytime I grade using a checklist or a rubric. Developing an effective instructional strategy means taking into consideration the amount of time you have and the delivery of your content. I felt the best way to do this was through a workshop type lesson in which I demo the material and then allow students to practice certain tasks on their own under my guidance. From there, I developed instructional material I felt would be useful. I created a step-by-step screenshot PDF the learners would have access to at any point. And created a screencast tutorial for my learners to use for further assistance. The following is a small clip from that tutorial.
The next thing you're going to want to do is, from there, you have classwork. And this really is where all of the magic is going to happen. You're going to be able to create assignments and quizzes and all different kinds of things to assign to your students. So here is this create button, and from here you'll have a drop-down menu. So let's say the first thing you want to do is create an assignment. Okay, so one of the first things I like to do is to assign a personal collage to my students. And basically, this is just a way for me to get to know them. They go online and they pick a bunch of different pictures that represent them, and they'll turn it in. So I'm going to ask them to follow the instructions in the attached document. Okay. So from here, again, I'm going to go to my Google Drive, and I have my copy of my collage. Here it is. And from here, you are going to have a couple different options. You can have the students view the file. So in this instance, they're just going to view the file. I don't need them to do anything to the file, but if I did, I could allow the students to edit the file. So let's say I wanted to create a sign-up sheet for, maybe they're studying different countries in North America, or let's pick South America, there's more countries. I would ask them to sign up for the country that you want to research. I would allow them to edit that file. That way everyone could see the edits being made. So if a particular country was already taken, the students would need to move on and pick a different one. Or let's say you had an actual assignment where the students needed to fill in their own ideas about something. You could make a copy for each student, and they would be able to work within that file and turn that file in. This instance, I just need them to be able to view the file, but know that you have those different options. Okay, here you can select a due date, and you can even add this to a specific topic. I'm going to go into the topics a little bit in a few minutes, but for right now, I'm going to leave this just as it is, and I'm going to hit assign. So here you see it. If you come back to stream, it's going to show up right here. And when the students look in the classwork, they'll be able to see the personal collage.
One of the most important parts of the design process is gathering data to revise and make your instruction more effective and efficient. With my original plan, I gathered data by simply asking my colleagues what they thought, and I didn't get much feedback. I made note that next time I would give a questionnaire with specific questions, which is what I was able to do with Dr. Gronsa's class. These are the questions I was able to ask in a post-instructional questionnaire given in Google Forms. Throughout this program and the design of this professional development, I learned a lot about all of the factors that can affect how someone learns. Learning preferences aside, looking at the learner's ability, motivations, and attitudes was extremely eye-opening. Taking the classroom into consideration and the way in which the learners will later perform the tasks being taught is something I will always think about and carry with me into my practice. I have also realized that technology and its use will continue to evolve. Therefore, I have to continue to evolve as an educator if I want to be a productive member of the team I might find myself a part of. Up to this point, my focus was specifically on Google Classroom and showing teachers how to use it in order to help them differentiate their instruction using a digital platform and helping them create a more student-centered learning environment. But I was really interested in what the research said about how these technologies help support student-centered learning. So I first started off by looking at what student-centered learning is in the context of the classroom and its significance. I then followed that up by looking at different technologies and how it supports student-centered learning and factors to consider when using these technologies in your classroom. One main theory that seems to be leading to student-centered research is constructivism. And constructivism places emphasis on the learner actively participating with their environment in order to construct their own ideas. One of the most significant ideas I came across was just how many different definitions there are of student-centered learning and how not everyone agrees. However, most fall along the line of giving students more voice, which is often accompanied by a shift in power from the teacher to the student. In terms of what technology does to support student-centered learning, much of the research places the burden on that of the designer. Technology can help create a more enhanced learning experience and environment only when it's been designed to do so.